Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my Wandavision deleted scenes video from the finale, and there are a couple other big deleted scenes from across the series that we'll break down. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 1 is going to be dropping next week. I'll be doing videos for all those episodes too. Careful for spoilers from all the Wandavision episodes so far if you haven't seen the series yet. But since the finale, the producers, the creators, and Elizabeth Olsen and some of the other actors have come out and explained what was going on with the episodes. There were a lot of hanging plot threads, a lot of open-ended storylines, and things that seemingly went nowhere, like clues for big payoffs that never came. So they answered a lot of questions about what was going on with that stuff. Some of it was on purpose, some of it was not on purpose. So if you felt like there were some things that were missing, especially from the finale, there are some big answers about that. So one of the biggest things that they had to get rid of in the storyline was a big subplot with Evan Peters' Ralph character, Monica Rambeau, the Darkhold, Senior Scratchy, and the twins, and Darcy's character. Remember, we only saw Darcy for that one really brief moment taking down Tyler Hayward in the finale, and then she never came back again. Like, they had a line of dialogue about her in the mid-credit scene with Monica Rambeau and Jimmy Woo, like, oh, she said the debriefs are lame. But they did actually have a much bigger scene addressing what was going on with that character. There were a lot of reshoots that also happened because of the virus, I'll explain, and actors that weren't able to come back, so there were some things that they were not able to fix before they actually dropped the episode. I know there were a lot of people that were upset by the payoff with Evan Peters' character, expecting something bigger with him. Why are you going to do Quicksilver if you weren't actually going to do Quicksilver? Then you have all these hints and teasers about Senior Scratchy throughout the episodes. It seems like there's going to be some big payoff with his character. Turns out that was part of the deleted scenes because they couldn't finish the special effects in time. So what was going to happen is that Evan Peters' character, Ralph Bohner, was going to catch Monica Rambeau snooping on their house. Snooper's gonna snoop. But while they were there, once Monica Rambeau freed him of Agatha Harkness's influence, he was actually going to turn good and try to help them stop Agatha Harkness and take the Darkhold. So while Scarlet Witch and Agatha Harkness are having their battle, their back and forth during the finale, you have all this separate stuff happening with Ralph, Monica Rambeau, Darcy, and the twins character trying to steal the Darkhold from Agatha Harkness's basement, or technically it was Ralph's basement. What was going to happen though is that Senior Scratchy was going to be guarding it for Agatha Harkness. So in the last couple of episodes that we saw him, you just see Agatha Harkness stroking him like, oh, clearly there's going to be some sort of reveal. Like, we found out that she was Agatha Harkness, but they haven't fully revealed what was going on with the bunny this whole time. So while Monica Rambeau is busy freeing Ralph, you have the twins moving in to help because Billy and Tommy want to do something too. They wind up going to Agatha Harkness's house, and then as they go down into the basement, down into her lair that she had enchanted with all those runes, Senior Scratchy was going to turn into a giant demon and literally try to scratch them. Like, that was what the name was all about. Like a funny reference about him having giant claws. A lot of people heard this and they're like, does that mean that he was going to turn into Mephisto or some larger, more important Marvel comic book demon? No, he was just going to turn into a general demon that was being controlled by Agatha Harkness. So you have this big fight scene with Monica Rambeau, Ralph in the background cowering in fear, and then the twins using their powers as well, trying to stop Senior Scratchy while they try to get their hands on the Darkhold. Now obviously Agatha Harkness still winds up getting the Darkhold during the finale, so eventually they would have been unsuccessful, but it would have been a much bigger Marvel movie-style action scene where you see Monica Rambeau using her powers in a bigger way, the twins using their powers in a bigger way. And you would have had a bigger payoff for the Ralph character, because obviously we all wonder what happens to Ralph after the end of the series. Like, Evan Peters' character just goes back to his normal life because she enchants Agatha Harkness back into that identity of the nosy neighbor, and presumably she's just going to move back into his house. Darcy would have also been helping them do this the whole time before she shows up to take down Tyler Hayward, because that was going to be one of the last big things that she does before she shows up at the end of the episode. But it's a whole bunch of scenes. It would have made the episode way longer if you're wondering why the episode felt shorter than it was supposed to be, even though they were hyping it up as being super long compared to the other episodes. The main reason why they got rid of all that stuff is just they didn't have the time to finish the special effects before they needed to air the finale. Normally when they do stuff like that though, when they delete whole storylines, it creates some continuity errors and they fix it with scenes that they add in reshoots, like little moments of dialogue to just address stuff. Originally, they would have brought Darcy's character back in this mid-credit scene with Jimmy Woo's character, and she would have just been present for that debrief scene. I believe the reason why Kat Dennings did not come back to do that, though, is just because of travel restrictions during the virus. She just wasn't able to travel to actually come back and film the scenes. The next big thing that they actually got rid of was a full episode. So Matt Shakman, the director of the series, he directed all the episodes, said that originally they had planned to do a full 10-episode run, just because that's a standard number for limited series like this. The reason why he said they got rid of it was mostly for budget and for pacing issues, because the way they wanted to tell the story with the sitcoms at the beginning, then sort of spiraling into the crazier stuff as you start to find out what's actually going on, and it turns into more of a traditional Marvel Avengers movie. But for those of you that saw all the reports about a secret 10th episode, that's probably what was being referenced. They said that when they got rid of that 10th episode, a lot of those moments just got put into other episodes, so it's not like there's an entire episode of deleted scenes or anything like that. The producer played it pretty coy when she was trying to explain why Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange character didn't have a cameo scene if so much of this was building up to a big Doctor Strange 2 crossover. There were a lot of things that they planned to do and a lot of things that they never planned to do on purpose. It sounds like they weren't able to include him just because of travel restrictions during the virus, the same reason why Darcy couldn't come back to film a scene for the end. I believe Benedict Cumberbatch was trapped in New Zealand just under travel restrictions while they were busy filming all the stuff that would have been in the finale for that post-credit scene. And for whatever reason, they just decided not to try and bend over backwards to do some sort of green screen Skype session to try and include him. They just decided to just forget about it and let them address it when they get to Doctor Strange 2. But hopefully that sort of clears that up, because it did seem like they were building up to a big cameo scene, and logically you would expect him to show up at some point to address the Darkhold. There are a lot of people that actually doubt whether or not they ever plan to include his character. Here's the thing about that. The producers were asked a lot of questions about why they didn't include characters like Mephisto or big Marvel cosmic villains. They said that there was never any plan to include a big bad like that. Like, Mephisto was never part of their plan. So I think if Benedict Cumberbatch was never supposed to have a cameo, they would have said the same thing. Oh, he never was supposed to have this. He was never part of our plan. But instead their comment was more like, well, things went down the way they went down. Like, it sounds like it just didn't work out. Like, they wanted to do it, but it just didn't work out because of scheduling. But that also obviously answers the Mephisto question. People wondering, was there ever supposed to be a big bad like Nightmare, Mephisto, or Chthon, because they kept referencing the Darkhold, chaos magic, and he's the god of chaos? The way they talk about it, their grand plan for the series was to just tell the story about Scarlet Witch dealing with her grief and Agatha Harkness trying to take advantage of that. And that they didn't actually view Agatha Harkness as the villain of the series. The main writer actually said that she wrote things so that Scarlet Witch would come off feeling like more of a gray anti-hero type of character, like a Winter Soldier type character, someone who you normally think of as a hero, like she's an Avengers character, but who has also killed a lot of innocent people. So if you felt like the moment she went out on with Monica Rambeau didn't really address any of the consequences of what she did, like they'll never know what you gave up. This is that they wrote it that way specifically so that she would come off feeling like a very dark character, and that theme would continue during Doctor Strange too. Kevin Feige did say that her character, Scarlet Witch, is going to be crucial to what's going on during the story in Marvel Phase 4, building up into Multiverse of Madness, so it's still a little early to start theory crafting about the plot of Doctor Strange 2, but I do think that we'll see more of her going off the rails, causing as many problems as she helps solve. Like the prophecy of the Darkhold says, she's destined to destroy the world. Also answering some of the questions about the multiverse and Evan Peters' character. So Elizabeth Olsen actually just made a recent comment that she didn't truly understand how the Marvel multiverse worked, or the MCU multiverse worked, until she started working on Doctor Strange 2. And that when they were talking about Evan Peters coming on the show, they never really had any big multiverse conversations, or they never really explained it to her. Mostly the idea with including him instead of Aaron Taylor Johnson's version of Quicksilver was to show just how crazy she had gone, how far she was willing to go to bend over backwards to make it seem like everything inside the Hex was totally normal and nothing was wrong. They did get into a little bit of multiverse stuff, explaining her as a Nexus character, but they didn't completely explain that, kind of leaving it open-ended for them to deal with during Doctor Strange 2. As with White Vision just sort of flying off into the distance and them not answering what happens with him next, they said they did a lot of that stuff on purpose, just sort of viewing Wandavision as a series as like the next episode in a series of episodes of the story of the MCU. In the next big episode of that, like episode 10 of Wandavision, really is Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness. Normally when you have a limited series that's only going to run for one season, they answer pretty much all the questions in the finale, but they never plan to do that with WandaVision. And Kevin Feige actually recently came out and clarified some of his statements about WandaVision Season 2. He said that when they initially did the series, they didn't do it with the intention that they would set up a Season 2, so if they ever do come back to Season 2, it'll be a completely fresh story, just building on whatever they've just done with her character in Doctor Strange 2. So there is a chance that they could do season 2, and they have a couple moments in the finale where they address it, like family is forever, and then Vision tells her, if we've said goodbye so many times, then I have to surmise that we'll say hello again eventually. But I think the whole idea with Vision's character is that White Vision will eventually become the regular version of Vision again once he's able to process all of his original memories. But Paul Bettany said that he would play the Vision character forever. He'll keep coming back as many times as Marvel wants him back, so of course we will see White Vision come back in a future story somewhere. More about Quicksilver though, they said early on they did actually think about doing Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver, but because they were doing this whole story with Scarlet Witch going off the rails, they felt like the Evan Peters twist played into that much better. For those of you wondering about Monica Rambeau's engineer that had been hyped up during episode 5, Teyonah Parris, the actress who plays Monica Rambeau, was saying it was going to be this big payoff. Then it wound up being this character, Major Goodner, that really didn't seem like anybody special. The director, Matt Shakman, said that that was just overhyped. It was never meant to be a really special character. It was never meant to be a Fantastic Four person. It was never meant to be the Blue Marvel, although it does sound like, based on a casting notice for Captain Marvel 2, that they're planning on doing Blue Marvel during that movie. There was a big scene during episode 8 where you see the flashback where she goes to visit Vision's body at the Sword headquarters, and Tyler Hayward is trying to gaslight her so that she'll juice up his body with a bunch of her chaos magic and activate him. There was an alternate version of this scene with a bunch of different dialogue where she starts referencing Avengers Endgame and all the other Avengers that died. She references Black Widow dying, she references Iron Man dying, a bunch of the other big characters like Captain America, but it was all in service of saying, why aren't we paying attention to what's happening with Vision? Like, nobody cares about him. Everyone just kind of left him on the battlefield there. I think they changed that to her simpler dialogue about wanting to bury Vision's body, mostly just so they could leave addressing Black Widow, the other dead characters in future movies. Like, we already saw Iron Man's funeral during Avengers Endgame, but they're going to address Black Widow's character during the Black Widow movie. The writers and the producers also clarified that throughout the series, throughout all the episodes, there were a lot of intentional red herrings that were meant to go nowhere. Like a really good example, biggest red herring is Dottie's character. Like early in the episodes, I think it was episode 2, where Agatha Harkness says Dottie is the key to everything in town. So there were all these theories about her being one of these other big comic book characters that was another witch hiding out in town, another magic user, when really none of that was going on at all, and the writers said that that was on purpose. They purposely wanted to mislead you and make you think that she was a big character when really she was not. So I think that also goes hand in hand with the Ralph Bohner, Evan Peters Quicksilver twist. Like, they wanted to sort of head fake you in a way that would make you think something really big was going on when really that wasn't their intention, which I don't think was such a great idea. But I think the answer to that, like if you were kind of upset with the way it treated some of those storylines, Falcon and Winter Soldier will be more of a straight up MCU action series where they're not trying to mislead you or take you down roads that never wind up going anywhere. So Falcon and Winter Soldier will be a really good palate cleanser before we get to more Marvel stuff later this year, like the Black Widow movie or the Hawkeye series. Not every single Marvel series will work like WandaVision did. But what's going to happen is my Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 1 video will post next Friday. It'll be on the same schedule as when I posted all my WandaVision episodes. If you have any big questions or there are any Easter eggs that you're not sure about that I didn't mention during this video or big deleted scenes that I didn't address, just let me know in the comments. But really cool thing, Benedict Cumberbatch has been saying all kinds of really awesome stuff about Sam Raimi, Elizabeth Olsen as well, so it sounds like that movie is going to be crazy in the best possible way. Benedict Cumberbatch also refused to answer questions about Spider-Man 3 No Way Home, so it sounds like that is also going to be super crazy. But while you wait for everything, click here for that brand new Falcon and Winter Soldier trailer, and click here for all my WandaVision episodes. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.